Alright, so today I'll be building my own custom keyboard. I'm sure a lot of us got into new hobbies this pandemic, and today I would like to share one of mine. I really got into the custom keyboard scene after watching a lot of really cool custom keyboard builds from the likes of Keycap Types, Majineo, Tay Keyboards, Random Frank P, and others. Laid out here on the table are the parts that I will be using in my build today. But before that, a quick story time for context. I got myself into the hobby by ordering a drop control mechanical keyboard a couple months back. The configuration I got was the low profile silver version with cherry MX browns. Being a real noob at the time, I didn't bother modding my board because 1, I didn't want to break a board that cost 2 times my old keyboard, and 2, coming from gaming keyboards, using it stock was already a huge upgrade in experience. So yeah, I've been using it stock happily for the past couple months. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depends on who you ask, falling deeper into the rabbit hole of the custom keyboard scene made me realize that there was so much more I can do to make my board sound and feel better. I initially planned to just mod my old drop control, but with the north-facing LEDs possibly causing interference with cherry-style keycaps and the horrible stock stabilizer quality, I decided to just sell my old board and build a board myself. The keyboard I will be building in is the GMMK Pro. This board is really popular right now, and one of its selling points is that you can easily pick one up for retail, avoiding the common frustration in the community of waiting for group buys. For those who aren't familiar, a lot of keyboards and keyboard accessories in the enthusiast scene are only available via group buy. What happens is that you would wait months for an item to become available via group buy. Wait for about a month for the group buy period to end, then wait another few months for the group buy to be fulfilled. It's not uncommon for group buys to take almost a year, and delays can even make them last even longer.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Not needing to wait for group buys is one of the reasons I chose this over the popular NK65 or KBD67 Lite, because right now, the group buys for those aren't active, and the markup of those boards in the aftermarket are way above SRP, even for used ones, and I am not gonna pay more for a used board. The board itself is really hefty and feels very premium. The machining is done well, especially on the rounded edges. It is a 75% board, so while it is smaller than a TKL, it still retains the function row, which I use for work. It also has a knob for adjusting your volume on the fly, which I really like for its convenience. The south-facing LEDs make it so there will be no interference with cherry-style keycaps like with the drop control. I also like that they made the branding at the bottom really subtle. I picked up the glorious coiled cable, which matches the board. The cable feels really high quality, and the coil part looks bigger than some others that I've seen. For the switches, I will be going for the glorious Pandas. I know that there's a noticeable amount of glorious products that I will be using here, but I promise that I'm not a fanboy. A lot of the accessories like the switch puller and the switch opener I just ordered at the same time for convenience. I chose the switches back when I was still planning to mod my old drop control. The drop control only accepts 3-pin switches, and I didn't want to permanently alter a 5-pin switch, so I went with the glorious Pandas. As a side note, I'd like to add that I don't like the design of the glorious PBT keycaps. So yeah, not a fanboy. The glorious Pandas are tactile switches, which means that there's a tactile bump every time you bottom out on a switch. I know that a lot of people are into linear switches, but I've always preferred tactile switches over linears, because the tactility produces great feedback and makes for a really satisfying typing experience. The glorious Pandas have a great tactile feel stock, but there's a scratchiness that you can kinda feel and definitely hear when it bottoms out. To make it feel and sound better, I will be lubing and filming the switches with Tribosys 3203 and Desky switch films. An equivalent to Crytox 203G0, Tribosys 3203 is great for tactile switches. It's a thin lube, so while it makes switches buttery smooth, it won't be at the expense of any tactility. I originally tried using the thicker Crytox 205G0 on some of the switches, but I found that even when applying only a thin layer of lube, the loss in ductility was a lot more than I would like. I actually lubed most of the switches off camera. I'll be showing my process of lubing the switches with some unlubed ones that I have here. First off is to use a switch opener. The one I have here is from Glorious, but it essentially works the same way as any cheap switch opener you can find anywhere. Since the Glorious Pandas are cherry style switches, I use the cherry style opener. Just press it in there and separate the parts to the top housing, bottom housing, spring, and stem. For some reason, the housings of the Glorious Pandas are kinda tight. I had to pry them open with my fingers after they came loose. For most other switches, this shouldn't be a problem, and they should just pop out. For the switches, I use the bag lube method to save time. Just cover the sides of a Ziploc bag with lube. Here I'm using the GPL 105. Then put all the springs inside and shake it till every spring is evenly coated. A bigger Ziploc bag will probably make it easier, but I just used what I had lying around. After lubing the springs, I start off by lubing the sides of the bottom housing, then around the middle. I then place the springs back into the bottom housing before moving on to the stem. If you have a stem holder, this would make it easier, but I just use a pair of tweezers that I had. I lube the sides of the stem, being careful not to lube the stem legs, as lubing the stem legs can turn your tactile switch into a linear. Once that's done, I put the stem back on top of the spring. Before putting the top housing back on, I place a piece of switch film on top, then close the switch. And that's basically it. Lubing switches takes a lot of time. I took more or less 4 hours to finish all the switches. Adding the extra step of filming the switches, and this being my first time lubing, probably made it take a lot longer than it should have. But I honestly did not mind. I just put on some music, watched a couple of YouTube videos, and I finished it over a weekend. It was actually pretty relaxing, and the result is a switch that sounds and feels way better than the stock switch. Before putting all the switches in, I'll test the board's stabilizers. Comes pre-lubed, so it sounds better than the stock stabs of the drop control, but it can definitely sound better.
Oh, God damn it!
I opened the board to take out the stabs. After removing the stabs and disassembling them, I rinsed out the old lube with water and soap and let them dry out. I will be Holee modding the stabs. I'll link a more in-depth video below, but basically I will cut and place a piece of fabric band-aid inside the stems, which purpose is to reduce rattle. After band-aiding, I lube the stems, housings, and wires with Krytox 205 G0 before putting everything back together. Here's a sound test for the upgraded stabilizers.
Okay naman.
With everything ready, we can finally put in the switches. It should be as simple as popping the switches in the sockets, but for some reason some of the switches took a lot of force to get in. Like my thumb hurt for at least 30 minutes after putting all the switches in. I'm not sure if it's the PCB plate that's tight, or if the switches got thicker with the films installed. On that note, the films were supposed to lessen stem wobble, but after comparing it stock, there wasn't much of a difference for me. So I would say the Glorious Pandas don't really need to be filmed. Now is the most exciting part, Keycap time. I got 2 keycap sets from Kinetic Labs, the Polycaps Whale PBT keycaps and the Polycaps Black on White PBT keycaps. For $65 and $60 respectively, I think they look great and are really good quality, especially compared to ePBT sets that are around $100, or the legendary GMK sets that'll set you back $150 to $200. I like how they both look. I'll be sticking with the Whale PBT keycaps, since I'll be getting my ePBT Kuroshiro soon. I'll save the black and white theme for another build or upgrade. Now for the final sound test.
This is the worst!
Just from the sound test, you can already hear the difference, but I have to say, the feel when typing is like night and day. Typing feels so smooth, and I'm really happy that I decided to build my own board. Modding really makes a huge difference. This hobby can get really expensive, but since we're all stuck at home and always on our computers, investing in something that makes the experience more comfortable is a good excuse to say that it's reasonable. But yeah, I guess that's it for now. I might make another video when I plan to change my stabs, or if I get another board. But for now, thanks for watching, stay safe, and have a nice day.